be talking about all things Instapot. We're going to be making one of my favorite Instapot recipes, which is Instapot Paella. Paella probably isn't the most popular Instapot recipe on my blog. In fact, I think it's probably spaghetti and meatballs or the copycat Panera chicken broccoli soup. But it's actually my favorite, and I don't think it's not necessarily because it's not a good recipe. It's that people just don't make paella at home. It's a pain in the butt. Paella is a Spanish rice dish. It's usually made with bamba rice, which is a short, fat-grained rice. It's expensive. Sometimes it's hard to find. And historically, it's actually made with rabbit. Here is a paella dish. They're thin, kind of metal. They're very low. The rice cooks faster and gets a crispy crunch on the bottom because there's so much more surface space than there would be in a saucepan. I have not used mine in a really long time, and I just remembered to pull it out right before the feed, and it's very dirty, so I'm not going to show you the inside. This is actually a very small paella pan. They're usually cooked over fire, and they're much larger. In fact, the large paella pans, if you look them up online, need several people to help carry them. In fact, I learned a lot about making paella from Jose Andres, which is a Spanish chef down in Puerto Rico. I was there with him and Anthony Bourdain and a bunch of other famous cooks. We made huge vats of paella in these giant dishes that took 3 men to carry. It was amazing. So this is a hacked version. This is not an authentic paella. I am the first one to tell you that. So let's get started. My plan now is to tell you a little bit about the Instapot, but make the recipe, and while it's coming to pressure and cooking, I'm going to answer Instapot questions from you guys, but also some that I have on the blog that I get frequently. So some questions and answers you might not even know you had the question with. So the first thing we're going to do is tell you this is a 6-quart Instapot. It's a 7-in-1 cooker. Some of them are 10-in-1. Although I don't use half the functions. I use the electronic pressure cooker function, the saute function, the slow cooker function, and that's probably about it, the keep warm function. It does yogurt, but yogurt takes about 24 hours, and I find that cooking rice under the pressure cooker function is actually easier. The pot itself isn't that large, so it has a slow cooker function, but I find that most of the stuff that I do in the slow cooker, I want a larger pot. So if you plan on using this as your slow cooker, I would recommend getting a larger version, a 9-quart or something larger. So one of the reasons I like it compared to a slow cooker is that I can saute things. I tend to avoid slow cooker recipes that want me to brown the beef ahead of time or saute anything. I literally want to dump all of my ingredients in and have it be done. I don't mind adding a little cornstarch at the end to thicken up the sauce, but I don't want to have to do much more than that. With the Instapot, I can brown the meat, I can do all of that in the pot without having to dirty up anything else, and it only takes a few minutes. That's what we're going to do here first for our hack job paella. So I'm going to turn on the saute function here, and the bottom of the pot is going to get hot. And next I'm going to use some olive oil. Well, I am using a chicken sausage. It's already cooked, so it doesn't have a lot. That just means it's on. It doesn't have a lot of fat in it because it's already cooked and it's chicken. So I need something to coat it. You can, if you're just trying to reduce calories, use cooking spray if you want, but traditional Spanish cooking uses a lot of olive oil. I think when we think of olive oil, we think of Italy, and Spain is just as notorious for using olive oil as Italy. There are 2 different types of olive oil that I always keep in my house. A light virgin olive oil, you can hopefully see that color here. I put it in glass so you can see it. It's a much paler yellow. And then first press olive oil. It's much darker, it's thicker, if you taste it, it's actually kind of spicy a little. And really good stuff. So this darker stuff, the first press, I reserve for salad dressings, drizzling, finishing, things along those lines. Something that's a very olive oil heavy or olive oil first type of taste, like a focaccia bread. If I'm just going to be sauteing or adding it into a recipe that has a lot of other competing flavors like paella, I'm going to use this light olive oil. It's a little bit cheaper. I also want you to make sure that you're buying a good olive oil. There are some olive oils that are imported that mix vegetable oil and canola oil in with the olive oil, and that makes it a little bit cheaper. So cheaper is not always better when it comes to olive oil. FDA in the US has very strict standards, so I actually buy mine from California unless I'm making something where I find I want a really, really good olive oil that I can find imported from Spain or Italy, and then I go to the actual Italian markets to buy it. So I'm going to set that aside. This is hot. It gets hot pretty fast, so that's a good function. I'm going to put in my olive oil. This is an andouille sausage, so while that is typically more of a Cajun Creole kind of flavor profile. It does have a little bit of smokiness to it and a tiny bit of heat, and that's what I'm going to want in my paella. So I'm just going to throw this chicken sausage in here. Again, it's already cooked, but we're going to brown it. Browning it is going to create a little bit of acidity. It's going to bring out the flavors in the chicken sausage, and it's going to leave some of those flavors in the olive oil. We're infusing the olive oil with flavor. So we're actually going to take the sausage, because it's already cooked, out of the Instapot to cook the rest. Let me set this over here. So one of the, actually, you know what, I'm going to need that back. The Instapot is a little bit tricky to some folks, because unlike the slow cooker, you don't want to put everything in together. If I were to put the chicken sausage in with the rice, the chicken sausage would almost disintegrate. It would almost fall apart. Same with a lot of vegetables. So when you're looking at what recipes to cook, sometimes you'll have to add vegetables halfway through. Maybe turn back on the pressure function for a minute or two. And that's because they'll literally just fall apart. In fact, I have a pot roast recipe that's coming out shortly. And you have to layer the potatoes and the carrots, and use big carrots, not baby carrots, very specifically so that they don't just disintegrate and turn into mush while they're cooking. It's the same for some other vegetables that we're going to use today, which I'm going to use some roasted red peppers. Those would just be gone. And peas. Those would just be gone. So we're going to add those at the end. The meat, since it's already cooked, doesn't need to be in with the rice. One of the reasons I love this paella recipe is that it doesn't just have to be chicken. There are really three elements we're looking at here. We're looking at the meat, whatever the protein is, the rice, and what flavors we give the rice, and then the vegetables. If you want a very protein-heavy paella, just making sure I am still live. Hi, Joe. Good to see you guys. You can add more meat, because we're going to add the meat back at the end. So all you got to do is make sure that the meat is cooked, and it'll reheat when you put it back in. So I've got chicken sausage cooking here that I'm going to put back in. It's infusing that olive oil. But I also have some shrimp that I cooked a little bit earlier today that I'm going to put in. If you just want rice, you can skip this step altogether and just do a vegetarian paella. If you want to add shredded chicken, you can do like rotisserie chicken and skip this step altogether, shred it. You could add just seafood if you want it. I like mine with calamari, some shrimp. You can put clams, oysters, anything you want in it. Just make sure that they're cooked, and we're going to add those back at the end. If you want to sneak in even more vegetables, you could double the vegetables if you want, and you're not going to hurt it. You could add in more peas, you could do corn, you could do more roasted red pepper at the end, you could do more, and you're going to find out here, my sofrito hack is salsa. You can do any of those and hide the vegetables from kids, husbands, whomever. So this chicken sausage is browning up, it's becoming very fragrant. I'm going to go ahead and fish it out. Again, that sauté function is nice, I'm not dirtying up another pan. And the other benefit to doing this and sauteing it is that pressure building with a pressure cooker is basically building heat. And, well, let me make sure I get everything out. If you're cooking something that's really cold, it's going to take longer to come up to heat. So if you're cooking, like you can do frozen chicken wings in the Instapot, you can do frozen meatballs, but it's going to take longer for the pressure to build. If it's hot already, or if you've sauteed something, it'll take less time for the pressure to build. It also goes with how much you have in the pot. If you have a little bit in the pot, it won't take that long. But if you filled the pot up to max capacity, which is about 2/3 of the way full, it'll take a little bit longer to come up to temperature. So we aren't going to use bomba rice. We're going to use arborio rice, which is a risotto rice, but it's still a short, fat rice molecule. So I'm going to use about a cup of rice. You get a little bit more in there. You can see I'm not really picky. So it's still hot. It's still on the sauté function. Okay. I'm going to swirl it around in the olive oil. It's still going to be kind of toasting, which is just going to add flavor to that rice. And I want the olive oil to coat the rice. I'm going to use chicken stock. One of my biggest hacks for rice, couscous, pasta, any of that kind of stuff, is to use a flavored cooking liquid. I don't care what you're making. If you use it and make any of these things, use a chicken broth, use a white wine. You don't have to use the entire thing. Lemon juice, hot sauce, any kind of flavored liquid is just going to add flavor to whatever it is you're making and make it even that more delicious. So my biggest hack here is, instead of making sofrito, which is the base for any good paella, which consists of tomatoes, garlic, onion, and bell pepper, I am using a thick and chunky salsa. when you make sofrito, you cook these things down, you sweat them out, for lack of better words, get all the liquids out of them, and it basically becomes a mush. So it's basically kind of like a salsa. So we're going to use this as our sofrito instead of doing all that chopping and cooking and sauteing. So I'm going to add that right on in here, and I'm going to cook it with the rice. Yes, there's going to be little pieces left over, and that's perfectly fine because that would be what would happen in a sofrito if we were actually cooking it. I'm going to stir it in here, but some of those flavors from the salsa are also going to absorb into the rice, making them just little flavor bombs. I've got a little bit of salt here. I usually use kosher salt, but I had to use fine sea salt today. My daughter likes to go in the pantry and take things out, and I find random things in random places, and I think the kosher salt is missing and probably somewhere in a toy box. I found minced garlic in the car the other day. And the last thing that's going to make this special is saffron. Saffron is going to be the most expensive thing you put in your paella. This little jar right here was about 20 bucks. I did get it on sale for 25% off. And just a little bit of history, people in Middle Eastern cultures as well as Spanish cultures used to base families' wealth on how colorful their rice dishes were, or their chicken was, or their soup was, because that meant if the family was wealthy, they could afford a good amount of saffron to put into it. So it not only adds flavor, but it also adds color. And it has a very clean scent to it. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's delicious. So these are little saffron threads, and they're going to dissolve into the rice. So I want to stir it around a little bit. When you get it out, you're not going to see those little threads. It's just going to be a very vibrant red color. So we've had saffron, our sofrito, salsa. We have our rice and our salt. And we're going to go ahead and put the lid on our pressure cooker. I'm doing this backwards. There we go. So on the top of your pressure cooker, you have a little vent. Don't worry if yours is loose. They're all loose. One side says venting, one side says sealing. Put it to the sealing side. It doesn't get tight. So yours isn't broken. That's just the way it is. It doesn't get tight. That means that it's going to keep all the pressure in. When it builds enough pressure, there is a little pin, a metal pin that's going to pop up and lock it in place. So I'm going to go ahead and push. Oh, hold on. It still thinks I'm on. You have to turn it off of the saute function before you can put it onto pressure. So it's going to ask me low or high pressure, and I'll tell you which one of those to use for what things in a minute here. I'm using high pressure, and I actually only need 8 minutes on the clock. So 8 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, especially for rice or paella. But it's not actually 8 minutes. So the only thing that really frustrates me with the Instapot is that most recipes don't include the amount of time that it takes for the pressure to build. And that can be anywhere from 4 or 5 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on how cold your stuff was, the volume that you have in there, and both of those things really, how the heat, the temperature, and the volume. So this is a relatively low volume, and we had it on the saute function. So hopefully it'll only take a couple of minutes. We have 3 minutes left on our paella, so I'm going to go ahead and get some of our other ingredients out here. So we've got our chicken sausage that we already cooked. I have some shrimp that I cooked earlier today in just a little bit of butter. I have frozen peas, although they're not so frozen because I prepped them earlier, and some chopped bell pepper. This is roasted bell pepper, so it's already been skinned. Again, this is kind of my makeshift hack sofrito style recipe going in here because there's not a lot of bell pepper in the salsa, and I still want that flavor. And put this back here too. I'm going to serve it up with a little bit of acid, which is going to be why this lemon is here. Acid's always good in meals. We got a little bit of it when we brown the chicken sausage. But for this one, I really want it to be acid forward and bright at the end. So that's why I did not add the lemon juice to the cooking rice. I'm going to add it at the end so you can really taste it. I'll probably also add a little bit of salt on top, Maldon sea salt. If you know me, I literally carry it in my purse because I enjoy it so much. We have 1 minute left. 1 minute. Let me get my salt here. Maldon sea salt is probably my favorite condiment ever. I add it to everything. People think I'm a crazy person because I carry it around in my purse. I have a little tin. That's thanks to my sister who bought it for me. Okay. This is like the longest minute ever for the Instapot, isn't it? Let me see if we have any more questions. Not as many people tonight. We had a lot more people last week. Well, I guess people will watch it afterwards. Thank you for everybody who did come. I appreciate it. Maybe that whole snafu we had in the beginning messed people up. Okay, so the Instant Pot's done. The pin is up. I'm going to go ahead and release the pressure, and you're going to see the steam go, okay? So that's what it looks like. It's steam, it's hot, don't touch it. Make sure it's not near anything. It's releasing the pressure. I'm going to stay away from it while it does. Depending on how much you had in there and for how long, it'll take a different amount of time. You'll know that the pressure is fully released when the steam stops coming out and the pin releases. If your Instant Pot's a little bit older, sometimes the pin gets a little bit stuck. Again, remember, it's not electronic, it's based on that pressure. So if the steam's gone and the pin hasn't released, sometimes you have to jiggle the lid just a little bit. If it doesn't go down, don't open it because it might not actually be all released. But sometimes it's just that it needs a little wiggle jiggle to make it go. And we're almost there. Slow last 1 minute, slow release of the steam. Come on. This takes a lot longer when you're trying to find stuff to talk about. Okie dokie, and it's done. So I'm going to open it up. I have some beautiful rice. There's still a little bit of liquid in there, and that's okay because that's how paella works. I'm not going to take this out because it is hot, but if you can see here, there's a plastic clear ring on the inside. You can buy these in colors too. That's that plastic O-ring. You can take it out and wash it separately. Get it out for you. And easily replace it if it's got odors or scents attached to it. Okie dokie. So now I'm going to add in all of my stuff that I want to heat up. Okay, so I've got this shrimp here. Put that in. I'm going to add my chicken sausage back in. I'm going to add my roasted red peppers. And my peas that were supposed to be frozen, but they're not so frozen now. And I'm just going to stir them all in. Now, in the real world, I'd go ahead and put the lid back on. It's on a keep warm function. Until you turn it off, the Instant Pot stays on a keep warm function. So I'd keep the keep warm function on, put the lid back on, and let it sit for about 2 to 3 minutes just to let those other elements come to the same temperature as the rice. But for timing's sake here, and the fact that I've already answered all the questions that came in, I'm just going to go ahead and serve it up here. So you can see the beautiful red color. That is both from the salsa, but also from that saffron. You can put a little parsley on top if you want to. I do a little bit of sea salt, and then of course I'll do little spritz of fresh lemon juice. Don't use bottled lemon juice, please use fresh. And there you go. You have your quick and easy chicken paella that we are going to now eat for dinner. It'll be one of the best meals you'll ever cook. It's fast, it's easy. You can also freeze this afterwards. It's great for leftovers. You could double the pot if you'd like. And there you go.